Hey, what's going on? Periscope, Facebook Live, YouTube Live. What's going on? Thank you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to the Kilo Bravo Delta Zone. Tonight we're going to be talking about camera metering, renting photography equipment. I'm going to show you a Photoshop tutorial that kind of talked about some of the things I mentioned in last night's scope. What's up, William? You guys, welcome to the Kilo Bravo Delta Zone. It's official. You are here in the Bomb Squad community. Yes, you are. You guys, we're going to, you know what? This is going to be a lengthy scope tonight. So I'm just warning you in advance. I'm going to walk you through camera metering at the very basic level. And I got to tell you, it's going to be, it'll definitely be exciting. So, I'm going to try to make it exciting. I don't know. Man, you got to love photography, I guess, to really enjoy it. So there we go. Let me see names and locations before we get started, you guys. Names and locations. Let's get that going. Names and locations. Okay. Jerry Kelly, what's up? Mr. JK, Steve from Ontario, Michelle from Ohio. Yes. David from Greensboro, Captain Amber, Captain Lamar, Dieter, what's up, my man Dieter, what's going on? Maryland from Missouri, yes. Jersey Joseph, Captain Joe, what's up? Captain Antoinette, Aldine, what's going on? William, all the way from Glasgow, Scotland. I got to tell you, that's commitment all day, you guys. Yes. Okay, let's jump into this. We're gonna approach this a little differently tonight, you guys. What's up? So I got a bunch of cameras working, and I'm gonna jump on the messages really quick because I'm not gonna waste a lot of time. We just have a lot of information to cover. So I want to mention the 90 PT. The 90 PT is gonna close in about a month or so. So May it'll close out, and what it does is it allows you to watch each webinar that I produce live. So it's one time live and then 2 recordings. It allows you to watch it 3 times. You pay $190 up front and you learn basically all of these segments. Now there's a blue program that is unlimited and it'll remain open, but it's going to cost more. And I just want you guys to know. So if you're interested in this program or you're putting your change together or you're working out the timing, whatever the case may be, see what happened there. Okay, there we go. Or you're working out your timing, whatever the case may be. All you got to do is just know that you're going to be on a time limit. So I'm not sure what's going on with the camera tonight, but let's switch back to that one. So there we go right there. So this will be closing in May. So if you guys want to jump in, I recommend doing it pretty early. So let's dive into some news and technology. And I want to talk about camera rental, and I came across this really interesting article that talked about, starting photography with little or no money. And I thought, well, is that realistic? Is that really possible considering all the things that you do need to do? So I sat down and I literally thought about it. And, I'm going to tell you from an equipment standpoint, and I can't solve this. This problem is too complicated to solve over a scope. And I think it's a difficult question to answer just overall. But the thing that I will tell you is if you can't afford to buy gear, borrow lenses. Now, they're a partner with us on Xposure 101. Borrow Lenses has packages, and I'm bringing up the Nikon package, obviously, because I'm a Nikon photographer. Now, I want you to check this out here. If you are a wedding photographer, this is the Wedding Essential. It doesn't include a camera body though, but these are all the lenses that you would need, and probably, it is one of the most reliable companies, and I know the people that work there. I've been knowing them for a long time, and I have a great relationship with them. They're really dedicated to the company, so this is the safest route. And as you can see, for 3 days, $160. I mean, there's taxes and insurance that go on top of that, but if you're shooting a wedding for $800, I'm going to tell you that this would be a great investment to make right out the gate so that you can get quality images, because I see people going out there with the consumer gear, and I got to tell you, that's just not going to cut it. So you definitely got to have professional gear if you're going to shoot professional events. And they have all kinds of stuff. They even have a portrait package. So don't skimp, you guys. Now, this is like getting into photography at the lower end, in terms of equipment and not being able to buy it. But when I say getting at the lower end, you're not spending a lot of money. You're getting in at the lower end of the financial spectrum in terms of photography. So this would be a great way to start out. And even if you think your budget's going to be limited, just track out how much you're going to spend renting, and if that amount starts to exceed the cost of the gear, then you got to start buying. And that's what I want to leave you with. So they have packages that you can rent, and that's what I wanted to address that particular issue, as it relates to starting with no money. And I think I'm going to dive into that even more as we progress. Now, you guys know I'm starting a podcast, and here it is right here. It is the Keith B Dixon Photography Zone. And I'm going to be getting this on iTunes as well as a lot of the other SoundCloud, wherever you can download audio. That's where I'm going to be. So, okay, looks like hey, I'm frozen on my phone. Are you guys still okay? Good. Okay, there we go. My phone froze for a second. Okay, so here's what's going to happen with this. I'm going to edit down tonight's broadcast in an audio version, so that if you miss it, you're going to be able to catch this. You can still you can catch this on the run. And what I'm trying to do, matter of fact, let me share why I'm doing this, and you guys can tell me if it makes sense. I got my phone bill, and it was outrageous. I mean, literally, I called them up and just kind of read them the riot act a little bit. I'm not kidding you. And they dropped off some charges, and most of it was for streaming or data charges. And I'm pretty cautious about streaming while I'm not on a Wi-Fi network. So they adjusted the bill, and we got it all straightened out. But have you guys experienced that, where you're getting like a lot of data charges? Have you experienced that? Throw up a Wi-Fi if you've seen your phone bill increase. It does look for Wi-Fi, but Rome, and maybe you can help out with this next question I'm going to have about Wi-Fis. Yeah, okay. So here's the next thing. So phones are or Wi-Fi is kind of trippy, because someone that's going to steal something off your phone, or just try to basically hack your phone, they might set up a mask that looks like some public area Wi-Fi, and then you log on there and they snatch all the information off of your phone and your banking information. So I don't typically use public Wi-Fi. I carry my own hotspot. That's what it means for me. Now, Rome is an IT expert. He's probably going to know a little bit. Yeah, I do have an iPhone. They throttle after 22 gigs on the unlimited plan. Yeah, matter of fact, I just found out about that today. So I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but what I'm gonna say is, to help minimize cost on all of our ends, so that we can continually educate ourselves, I'm going to provide podcasts, and I'm going to break these broadcasts down and put them in the podcast, and you can download them, when you get home, or if you're on a Wi-Fi, and then you don't have to worry about that, and you can still hear the broadcast. Now, I'm not saying you guys don't get on the live broadcast, because it's going to be different and a little bit more personal, but I want you guys to know that I'm going to make this available for those of you who are concerned about your costs. You have to turn off your Wi-Fi assist. Okay, so Rome is saying turn off Wi-Fi assist. Okay, I'll have to look into that. All right, perfect. So there it is, and this is how you can get to it. And I haven't officially launched this yet, you guys, under the sale data. Okay, we'll definitely do that. Thanks, Rome. So I haven't officially launched this. I'm creating the content. I'm going to add it. And right now, looks like I've got one follower, and that's Faith. Thank you, Faith, for following. And looks like we're getting the downloads. And following and subscribing, those are all different things. I want you guys to know that. So we can be following, we can be subscribing, and you can be downloading, whatever the case may be. All right, there it is right there. Okay, if you're looking for the Facebook page for the Bomb Squad community, it's real easy to find. And all you got to do is go. You got to do a group search though. You got to do a group search, and you're going to use this hashtag Bomb Squad right here. You're going to use hashtag Bomb Squad, and that'll get you to this banner. And look, we've already got people wanting to join and post and all that good stuff. So there you go. And here's I want to talk about a Photoshop tutorial. It's geared towards photographers. This is my daily edition. It comes out at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And what I do is I curate photography stories and then add them. Sometimes manually, sometimes it's done automatic. That way you guys can keep up. And as you can see, there's a borrow lens ad right there because obviously we just talked about borrow lenses tonight. And Petapixel is like definitely one of my good stories. But one of the stories that I saw in here that I thought was really interesting was, and you can subscribe to this as well. So there's all kind of ways to keep up with me. Let me just backtrack just a little bit. You can subscribe. You can go on here and just put in your email. I don't share emails, you guys, so you don't have to worry about that. And to be honest with you, I rarely send out newsletters because I kind of don't like it. You know, I mean, we already have enough stuff going on as it is. So I send them out every so often, you know, when I need to do something. But you can subscribe there. That just lets me know that you are interested in the content. And that's how I use emails. I use it as a gauge. And if I'm releasing a new program and I'm going to save you some money, it's good to be on the mailing list. Now, I thought this was really interesting because it kind of spoke to, here's an article. It says Photoshop tutorial, the 5 best ways to clean and heal skin blemishes. And the one thing that I liked about this article is it gave multiple ways of doing that. And if you read through this article, you'll see where it says there's about 5 different tools. So there's about 5 different ways. They mention frequency, the patch tool, healing brush, spot healing. It just really depends on, you know, workflow at the end of the day. So, you know, there's at least 5 different ways you can learn how to fix skin. Now, this is an exaggeration right here, obviously. I think that's a little extreme. But yeah, Petapixel is definitely a really good site. And the guy that actually curates the site, let's see if he's got his name in here. I don't see it right away. Anyway, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Oh, let's do it. We're running a little over time. So here's the main site right here. And the guy that actually curates all of this information, he spends a lot of time doing this. I mean, this is almost like a full-time job, you guys, literally. And what I'll do before I actually go onto a site is I'll go down here and I'll look for, I'll basically click on these links. I call it the roadmap, and see, you know, read all the information about the company, who's curating it, what they do, how they're involved in this. Oh, here it is. He got it up here. So here's the about information, privacy, disclosure. I actually read all of that. So here's their team right here for Petapixel. And these are all the guys that are doing it. So I think it's Sharky. Yeah, there he is right there. So Sharky James, pretty accurate most of the time, pretty candid. If you listen to his podcast, he's very candid about things that he talks about. But this is the main guy right here, Sharky. So check them out. But this is their team right here. And as you can see, they're pretty dedicated. And they have some diversity on there. All right. Let's dive into this other... program. So tonight we're going to be talking about camera metering, you guys. And metering is kind of interesting. I'm going to keep it very basic because I know we have some new people in here. So we're going to be super basic with it, but super informative as well. So you'll be able to, you'll definitely be able to follow this. I promise you that. Yeah, I'm on the green screen. I want to give you guys the less productive or the less produced screenshot. So big difference, right? You kind of enjoy the background, right? Okay, so let's dive into this. I'm going to run you through some slides here, and we're gonna get right into this. And again, we'll probably get out of here right about 8 o'clock, you guys. So this is actually a presentation that I taught to my C class. So the C class, obviously C means seeing, and this is one of the sections we would go through to help brand new people in photography basically create exposures. It's 3 a.m. Okay, so William, if you got to take off, I totally understand. I totally understand. So here we go. Here's what I want you to know about meters. A camera has a reflective meter. So basically, it measures the light, and the information travels back to the camera. So it does an outward measurement and then returns that value back to the camera. There's also an incident reading, and that requires a light meter. So you're going to take the light meter, and you've probably heard a lot of professional photographers talk about measuring light, and it is a very, very important process. And yeah, it's a very important process in photography, and especially on a professional level. And if you're using your camera meter, if you're not using it, you should definitely use your camera meter, because it's going to help you to create those 18% gray images that we talked about. And that's the starting point. You can under and overexpose to create more or less contrast with the photograph. But the thing that I want you to know is there's two types of metering, and it's based on a reading that's going to read how much light is in the photograph, so that you can make an exposure. There's reflective metering, and then there's incident metering. Okay, you guys hold on your questions, because what I'm going to do is, as I'm going through each slide, I'm going to stop after each slide and just see if there's questions popping up. That way I don't miss anything. Is this making sense so far, though? Is it making sense? Okay. Now, all right, perfect. Now, measuring light is probably one of the most important things you're going to do. As I mentioned, I got to tell you, you have to use your camera meter. And if you're in auto mode, you won't see the meter, because the camera is going to be doing all the work. That's how it works, you guys, unfortunately. As you switch over to manual mode, I'm going to show you what the meter looks like. They're all different, and they're all in different locations, but this is pretty much this is pretty much grayscale. You've got your black is black and your white is white. And grayscale is just basically dark to light. And in the middle, where that arrow is, there's a middle point. That is considered to be 18% gray. And it's a baseline for creating images. Cameras cannot expose for lights and darks at the same time. So what they do is they take the best of both worlds, which is middle gray, and then create the image based on those tones. So if you're exposing on the brighter end of the spectrum at 255, so if we were to put this on a histogram, the white side would be 255. That would be the whites. And then if we were to put the shadows on the dark end, that would be 0. So that the darkest point is 0. At the brightest point, it's 255. And in the middle, it's 18%. That percentage changes up or down. Now, I've read, and it's here in there, that most cameras are calibrated around 12%. Now, I've heard a lot of arguments. Camera companies have not confirmed that. And I don't know how anyone would prove it unless they worked for the camera company, because it's probably, it's probably proprietary information. And I'm going to tell you that if Canon is doing 12%, Nikon is doing 13%. So it's a moot point. We're just going to say 18%. Is this making sense for you guys? Before we move on, is this making sense? I hope it is. Any questions? Any questions before we move on? All right, there's Mike South, Commander Mike South. Okay, now, this is where it gets kind of interesting and also very confusing. And I'm gonna use the Nikon terminology, because Canon is different. So we have evaluative metering, center weighted, and spot metering. Now, it's pretty self-explanatory. Evaluative in Nikon terms is basically going to account for everything in the scene. And I think there's 1,023 calculations that is possible with the Nikon camera, somewhere around there. Or it could even be in the millions. I'll have to go back and double check that. I'm a little rusty on that part, but it basically has these preset ideals about how to calculate the exposure, and then it helps to basically bring that exposure to life when you're using evaluative. Now, yeah, so they're pretty close. Now, here's the thing: if you're shooting landscape photography, evaluative might be where you're basically metering the entire frame. That might be the way to go. It just depends on what you're shooting. Center weighted generally works really good for group portraits, and then spot is good for those tight portraits, because what you're telling the camera to do is to meter this area with the greatest accuracy to return the greatest values in terms of light. And then what happens after that, it discounts everything outside of the little circle or the bigger circle. And in evaluative, it basically meters everything. So that's what you really need to know. Now, that little red box, there's a little red box I'm going to show you in a second. That little red box actually is very important, because not only are you directing sharpness with the red box that pops up in your camera, you're also directing metering as well. Any questions before we go on to this next slide? Any questions? Yeah, portraits are going to be mostly spot oriented. And group, and I'm just giving you a reference point. This is not absolute. It's not written in stone. And when you use these features, if your meter is in the middle of the camera and you're in manual mode, you are going to return an 18% gray image. And what that means is your tones or your colors are going to be 18% gray. So if you have a bright red and a super light, you have a dark blue and a bright red, the camera's going to take the middle of both, or the average of both, and that's going to be your image. So your color will be somewhat inaccurate, and that's a whole nother thing. Nikon meters from the focal point, Canon is from the center. Okay, so that's what Rome says. Rome says that Nikon meters from the focal and from the center, and that's what you're seeing in this slide right here. But what I want you guys to really take home is the concept of it, because each camera that you buy is going to be completely different. So I don't want you to get stuck on technicalities. We just want to understand what this really means. All right. So there's my point right there that I just made. Meters look different in different cameras. They do different things. The most important thing that you should understand here is those three concepts. Here's what your meter looks like. This is not an absolute, you guys. This is not an absolute. A meter just looks like a scale. It has -2, it can have -3, it can have +2 on the other side, and each dot is a stop. Each dot is a stop. So, it is a stop. So you have one as a whole stop, and then you could have 2/3 stops, and that could be different. Maybe your camera's set up for half stops. Older cameras can generally do half stops. The newer ones are mostly third and whole stops. Now, what if you need a 10th stop? Because you want to match your meter. You want to match the readings in your meter. I mean, it's a trippy ball game here. So that's what you're in contention with. So those dots could be half stops, 2 halves to a whole. It could be 2/3, and then when you get to 1, you're at a whole. So you've got 3, and it just gets really trippy. So it all depends on the camera manufacturer, but I just want to give you an overview of what that means. Any questions? Any questions? If you guys are just tuning in, let me see. When you measure your light, do you set your camera to match the... Yes. So if you're using... that's a good question, Faith. If you're using a meter and you walk up to the meter, you're going to either meter for a shutter speed or an aperture. If you're in studio, you're going to be metering for an aperture. And what you're going to do is you're going to meter, and there's a technique to metering. I can't get into it now because that's the whole scope. But you're going to meter, and then whatever that reading is, you're going to plug that into your camera, and that's going to be your main. So you're always metering for the main light. And then you set your other lights accordingly. Or professionally, you're going to set your ratios accordingly. And that just depends. You want a 2-stop difference, a 3-stop difference, 4-stop. You want to get super dramatic and create a lot of contrast, a 5-stop or 6-stop. Or you can set your meter. You can set it to electronic. If you're using a handheld, you can set it to meter the electronic light, or you can set it to meter ambient as well. Now, there's some, and maybe I'll cover this, but there's some tricks to metering that you got to understand, because sometimes you might meter something at F8 and it's really 5-6. That's a whole nother story. All right. What does your meter do? So I'm going to reiterate. Yes, we will cover this in great detail in the 90 PT. And you see how we're just mechanically going through this? In the 90 PT, it's about doing this, but the additive to it is the application. How do you apply this? How do you make this work? What should you be looking out for? What's the thought process behind metering? Because we're just talking about it right here. So it helps to determine a correct exposure or a shutter. Well, we're gonna see shutter speed, aperture. So this is all your exposure triangle and your ISO. So sensitivity of the sensor. I'm gonna say at the time I created this slide, you guys, I was under the impression that sensitivity it controlled what your sensor does in terms of light is going to be less or more sensitive to light, your ISO. So when you set your ISO, I'm going to say this is the old understanding. When you set your ISO, you're increasing the sensitivity either up or down. So you're making it less or more sensitive. As I researched that, what I found was that's not actually what's happening. I hate to break this news to you. That's not what's happening, technically. Yeah, that's what I said. And I've read this on some pretty reputable sites. What I found was it's actually increasing the noise signal. So when you adjust your aperture or your ISO up or down, you're increasing the noise signal, the digital noise signal. This is the correct. Yeah, it increases the noise and not the sensitivity. So, you'll hear a lot of photographers say that too. Just like, yeah, it's the sensitivity because they're thinking about film. And you know what? That's splitting hairs, you guys. You know what? We're just increasing the sensitivity. You could say that. I wouldn't even fault you for that. So that's real. All right. Any questions before we move on? That's where you're exactly right. That's where the grain comes from. Any questions? Mike, you got to throw me a curveball. I'm waiting for Commander Mike to throw me a curveball. I need a softball pitch right now, Mike. I need to get challenged. And don't go into a technical journal and pull out a question. All right, here we go. And by the way, you guys, I'm really answering these questions off the top of my head. I'm not sitting here Googling the answer. So if I don't know it, I'm going to tell you I don't know it. Okay. So, your autofocusing system is also dependent. If you're a Nikon shooter, is definitely dependent on that red box. So if you're using your autofocus and you're using a single point autofocus mode, you're going to place the red box on the eye, and that's where everything is going to be determined by that. And then less calculation will go to the background. So it's real straightforward. So this is going to determine where the sharpness is going to be. It's not going to totally determine. Sharpness. There's a lot of other factors that go into what determines sharpness. If you want to control depth of field, it's got to be your aperture. If you want to increase your sharpness, it's a combination of a lot of different things. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will tell you, putting your camera on a tripod will increase the sharpness in your photograph. Understanding where the lens sweet spot is on your lens will increase your sharpness. It has nothing to do with that. Some people will tell you that, you know what, put that box on the eye. Put that box on the eye. Okay, here's where Nikon meters okay, so I'll have to come back to that one. Put the box on the eye and it's going to be sharp. Well, it's more to it. Are you hand holding the camera? Are you within 5 to 6 feet if you're hand holding? Do you have lens reciprocal? Those are all factors that go into it. So you got to know that. What kind of lens do you have? You know, these are all the things you have to think about. So this is metering. Do you have a proper exposure? Is sharpness? Okay, here's Mike. Let me see. Is sharpness an acceptable focus? Is sharpness an acceptable focus? No. I'm gonna say no. It's not. It's definitely not the same. Mike, and I don't have a good explanation right this second. I have to think about that. That was a good softball pitch. Hey, right? Hey, this is like I got to think that one through, Mike, because you got me right there in terms of how to explain it, but it's definitely not the same. And it's a lot of what I'm talking about right now, but I want to explain it in a way, you guys, that you can understand, not in a way that I understand it, but in a way that you understand it. And that's the answer I don't have for you right this second, but give me a chance to think that through. All right. Thank you, Mike, for that. I love it. All right. Now, spot metering. There's a time to use spot metering, and then there's a time not to use it. A lot of portrait photographers use spot metering for a lot of different things. But the thing that I want you to know about it is when you're trying to get a reading on a small, concentrated area, this is the application right here. This is what you want to do. Your focus is the eye, the eyelashes, the pupil, the eye whites. You're in tight because you're selling eyelashes. This is going to be your tool right here. It could be center weighted too. Yep, a sliver of light. Maybe you're trying to focus on a sliver of light. And here's the catch. To make this really work, you have to understand the depth of field inside of your lens, because as you stop that aperture, or as you stop down, the thing that you're going to start to realize is your slice of focus inside that lens is going to change. And there is a slice of focus. It could be a strip. I mean, it just runs all kind of funny directions. So you need to know how these two are going to play together. Yes. And what you're going to do, and the reason why you're metering, so Rome is bringing up a good point here. The reason you're going to meter is so that you don't blow out your highlights or you don't clip. Remember in those scopes we were talking about clipping and clipping out your highlights, clipping out your shadows? This is why metering is important. And reflective metering, I'm going to throw a tip in here for you. Reflective metering is somewhat dangerous. It can be, because light contaminates. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but light contaminates. So the light, there could be light cutting across the front of your camera. White backgrounds could be bouncing light back into the camera, and that's where you run into problems. So incident reading is definitely going to be far more accurate. And you won't be able to use your camera's meter in the studio anyway. You could, but it's just not going to make sense for the workflow. All right. Now, most cameras will have focusing points like 21, 9, 3. Every camera manufacturer is different. Nikon has a 9-point system, 21, just depends on whichever camera you buy. And you're just telling the camera to focus in this area and disregard. It's not literally disregarding, but it's just putting a concentration of the workload on the area that you're telling it to focus in. So for instance, let's say that looks like a 5.6, 7.1 depth of field, somewhere around there. And it could even be, that could actually be 7.1 because they're back so far. And that's where depth of field gets really tricky. So But to the camera, they could be on the same. Matter of fact, we could shoot this at 2.8 and get those people up close on our shoulders, and somebody might think it was f8 or f11 when in fact the people are on the same plane, and they just happen to be lined up perfectly, and you're shooting 2.8 and everybody's in focus. Matter of fact, here's a real live example. When I'm shooting group photos at an event and the lighting is really bad, I'm generally shooting around 2.8 and bouncing the light. And the images are tack sharp because I'm playing with the plane. I'm basically, and I'm going to throw this term out here. I know there's some new folks on here, but I'm looking for parallaxing and all that kind of stuff that you get when you shoot super wide up close. I'm looking for all that kind of distortion. Does focal length affect depth of field? Mike, that's too easy. Of course it does. Yes, that's too easy. Come on, Mike, you're a scientist. I need you to go hard. Like, I need you to come up. Mike, throw some of that terminology at me that I just can't even pronounce. So anyway, there it is right there, you guys. So I don't want to, how many new people do we actually have on here? How many new people? Throw up a Wi-Fi if you're super new to photography, and I'm going to say new is less than 5 years. You've been in this less than 5 years, part-time, full-time. Faith, Rome, who else? Dieter, okay. Amber, Joe, Marilyn, Mr. Kelly. Okay, so if you guys are still unclear about this, don't worry. It needs to sink in over time. And the reason why I'm saying it needs to sink in over time, because if you try to really get on this information and just hardcore, learn it, when you get out there in a situation and you're shooting, whether it be for fun or a hobby, you're going to completely space out and blank out because it's not muscle memory or memory. So you got to get memory and muscle memory to really make this stuff work, because you'll get out there and you'll be able to think through all the different steps. You will definitely crash and burn. So this has got to sink in slowly, because there are a lot of layers to, yes, you do got to take your time. There's a ton of layers. And if you take your time and learn each layer, you'll master it. All right. We're doing really good on time, by the way. So here's our center weighted, and where's Rome? There's Rome right there. So Rome mentioned that Canon meters from the center. So Canon and Nikon does it completely different. And that's Canon on the right side, and that's Nikon on the left side. That's how it looks. And I'm so used to shooting with that box in there, or looking at that box at the symbol. When I first saw the Canon one, I was kind of like, whoa. So once you get stuck on using a certain camera brand, it becomes second nature for you. So here's the important thing. Center weighted just gives you an average of the center. There we go with that average of the center, that 18% of center. And everything else is discounted, or there's less emphasis put on it. That's what I want to say. There's less emphasis put on the outside of that box, and that's what center weighted means. Now, I don't particularly care for 39 focal points because I'm used to 51. And on some Nikon bodies, they have 39 points. And I own a couple of the cameras that do, and I just don't like it. When you're using dynamic mode, your camera's going to track a moving subject, and it's going to determine the focus from there. Now, to be honest with you, I've never really used the feature. I've practiced with it, but I've never used it at a wedding or any of that kind of stuff, because the camera is basically in auto mode, and it's making the selection. And if your subjects are off plane, they're not lined up properly, it could go to the person in the back and throw the person in the front out of focus. So you got to be real careful when you're using this. And it works best, obviously, when there's a single person. Yes. So, or if you're at a sporting event and you're, and again, a single person, if you're at a sporting event and you see a player and he's single, he's coming down court dribbling a ball, or he's a football player, I think it works perfectly here. But um, if there's a bunch of people, the thing that I notice, it just kind of jumps all over the place. But it does work. You just have to use it in the right situation. And remember, this is a tool. Okay. Evaluative, and we're breaking this down. Evaluative, the thing that I want you to know is it's going to meter the entire scene. It's going to meter the entire scene. And the problem with that is sometimes if you have a lot of light, though, there we go. There's William right there. He's right on top of it. When you have a lot of light in one area, that could be a disaster because it'll bring up the brightness on the other side, and that could blow out the highlights, you guys. Literally. It could just take the highlights to the point where it's just right on the edge of clipping, or it could do the same thing to your shadows as well. So, and look at the bottom right there. This is ideally suited for quick shooting when there's not a lot of contrast in the scene. So let that be a tip for you. If you're going to use evaluative, let that be the reason you use it cautiously. Yeah, matrix, evaluative. Yeah, it is matrix for Nikon. I was trying to be when I created the slide, I didn't want to be so biased with because a lot of my students shoot Canon. Basketball, oof. So Van, here's the deal with basketball. Let's say you're on the floor and you've got sodium vapor lights, or you've got Kelvin lights. It just kind of depends because every gym is different. And then that light is bouncing off the floor that's yellow or brown in color. I mean, you just got a lot of things going on there. And then you throw the meter into it, and the meter is just going to give you the middle of both those colors. So, I'm going to say, here's what I would do. I would actually white balance if I was in a gymnasium and I know I was going to be, because sometimes they just limit you to certain spots on the floor. You can only be on one end or the other. I would actually use an expo disc and white balance because that's going to solve a lot of your color balance issues and metering issues, because the camera's just going to give you the middle of the worst situation. So that's how I would approach it at a basketball game. So I would do a manual white balance, and okay, so there you go. Because I mean, I wouldn't depend on the camera because there's just too many factors going on in there. And by the way, you guys, back in the day, I did shoot. I tried everything. Tried sports. I just wasn't my thing with sports. So matter of fact, when I met Terrell back in the day, he was, giving me the jazz on sports photography, but I just wasn't interested. And Mr. Kelly, I love sports. I love football. I'm a diehard football fan, but I just couldn't get into photographing it. Yeah. Rome, what do you consider a low f-stop? What do you consider a low f-stop? What's low? 2. Okay. I want to make sure because there may be some people in there, they may not know what a low f-stop is. So you guys, if you're brand new, when we say low f-stop, it's a small number. So that's slang for, we're basically using something, but it's a small f-stop or a low number, 2814. Yeah. Hey, Michelle, thank you for inviting people. 1812. Perfect. Okay. Now we're gonna do. I'm gonna show you this image because this is what happens to your exposure and your metering when the white balance is improper. So here's a picture of my son. This was shot probably like 5-6 years ago, and this is right outside of my office. And we went outside there, and he had just got out of college, so he was working with me, and it was so funny because I used to make him model for me, to create all my educational shots. But if you'll notice, the background is blown out here, and not only is it diffracting, right? I mean, if you enlarge this, you can really see it. I mean, it's just busted, right? It's turning the white gray. because this is totally auto right here. So it's turning the whites gray, and then the light that's coming in so there's some light that's behind him. You can see it looks blue. There's just all kinds of stuff going on, and this is what auto's going to give you when you don't white balance. So the whites look gray, and then look at his t-shirt. The t-shirt has a blue tinge in it, and the contrast is so heavy between his shoulder line and the background. The camera's just having a difficult time rendering, but it's doing okay. But the thing that I'm going to tell you is all the color tones in here that are inaccurate are pretty difficult to fix. They're pretty difficult to fix. And the image is probably not going to print that well because the whites are clipped out. You know, you've got this heavy contrast between the darks and lights. One of the ways to overcome this would have been to use a flash. That would have helped a lot. So, and then here's the last disaster right here. And I've already talked about it. It's got a bluish, greenish. This is not even close to accurate in terms of color. And this is what auto will give you. And some people might look at this and say, this is a great photo, right? But we got to move beyond that. We got to start looking at it technically, foreground, middle ground, background, or even a reflector. And the thing that I want to tell you about using reflectors is you got to learn electronic light on location. It's a must, because what if you don't have any sun? You're a natural light shooter. What are you going to do? Reschedule the shoot until it's a sunny day? No. You should have a repertoire of lighting tools at all times, whether it be a flash, electronic, mono, whatever the case is. So you got to be real careful with that. All right, you guys. You know what? I have a challenge for you. Here it is right here. I actually have a bomb squad assignment for you guys. How many people are interested in doing a bomb squad assignment? This is brand new. I'm going to be introducing these slides probably over the next couple weeks all the way up until the conference. So when you get to the conference, you are prepared. So here's what we're going to do. Here's the instructions right here. And what I want you to do, I haven't told Sheila this yet. Oh, you're okay. So Rome, you're excused because Matthew's stuff is pretty intense. Here's what you're going to do. I haven't told Sheila about this yet. I talked to her right before the scope. So what I want you guys to do, because she's going to be like, Keith, why is everybody tagging me in this assignment? Right? I love doing this kind of stuff. How many of you guys are game for this? Throw up a Wi-Fi. Yes. I told you I was definitely going to work you in the 90 PT. So you're doing with Matthew. Okay, good. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to go out and photograph 5 high contrast scenes and 5 low contrast scenes. And then you're just going to do a stop under and a stop over. And then shoot 4 images. So at least 4 images on auto. And then manually do a stop under and a stop over. And when you see the difference in the images, it's going to blow your mind. This is an assignment that I actually do in my C class, and you should see the images we get back. It's amazing. No exposure compensation. We're just going to use the meter. So don't use exposure compensation. By the way, exposure compensation raises the entire level for the exposure. So it raises everything. We're just going to use the camera meter. And then you're going to post your images and you can group them all together, do like a multiple posting, and just post your 10 images and label them. Now, the reason why I'm having you do this is because this is like a spec job. So if you were working for a client and they say, hey, we need this type of image, we need that type of image, you're going to be prepared for it mentally. So this is a spec assignment. And then you're going to tag Sheila Morgan in the photograph. How many of you guys are actually going to do this? Let me get a count. How many people are actually going to do this? All right, Rome's going to. Yes, Rome. All right, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's due on Monday. No later than Monday. Okay, good. So you have until Monday to do it. And you can turn it in earlier if you want, but Monday. Oh, good. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Don. All right, there it is right there. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is the Kilo Bravo Delta Zone. Hey, get ready, you guys. This is gonna be free, full of value. You have the CPP topics. Okay, and yeah, I'm gonna create an audio version of this. When you say high contrast, you're speaking the difference between yes, yep. Okay, you got me on that one, Mike. I don't remember that. I actually read about that, but I don't remember it. I can't even pronounce that, but I know what it is, but it slipped my mind, man. So you got me on 2, I think, because I don't have explanations for them. I don't have good explanations. But so Mike got me on 2 very technical things tonight. Mike, put those 2 things in so I'll know. So I could just fast forward. Put in 2. Mike is digging. Hey, Mike, you digging in the textbooks. That's no fair, man. I'm just waiting for Mike to type those in. Are you at work, by the way? Antoinette, is Mike at work? All right, you guys, there it is right there. There's my wife. What's going on? Hey, okay, he's at home. Okay. Hey, babe. Mike, Commander Mike is like he's throwing like the really super tough questions at me. He's not playing fair tonight. He's probably sitting in front of a book and it's like, let me see. Thank you, babe. Oh, yeah, okay. I knew it. Hey, that's matter of fact, what's that camp? Bellows. I read about that in London. Yep. So if you have a bellows, yep. See, man, I would have bombed on that question on the CPP. I read about that in London Upton. So if you have a bellows camera, because they talk about that, the tilt shift a lot and why you would use it. So you guys, for photography, gets really technical. And then what was the other one, Mike? I should know that off the top of my head for tilt shift. So I'm gonna go back. See how learning photography is really. I mean, it takes so much time, you guys, to learn all of this stuff, and not only learn it, like you might know it, but can you explain it? That's the thing. It's like, hey, I know how to do it, but do you know how to explain it? Can you translate it? And that's really the thing. Keystoning, yeah. I never heard of ship's prow. I'm gonna have to check that one out, but I know keystoning. That's easy. And yeah, you got to shim flug. I think it's shim flug. Yeah. Okay. All right, you guys. I'm up out of here. Keith B Dixon. So look, I wanna close with this. Shim flug. Yeah. Okay. So look. Let's talk about key considerations, and we're gonna dive up out of here. I told you we're gonna be about 50 minutes, and we're right on time. Cost, purpose, understanding, application, and profitability. A lot of my education has helped me to become more profitable as a photographer because I'm not working as hard as I used to. You're welcome, William. I'm able to apply a lot more technique, which I love, and I'm understanding more about photography technically. I love that part. And you know what? I started out with oh boy, hey, that's that. I know that one too, Rome. I know that one. You guys are going in, boy. I tell you. Cost. What is it gonna cost you? What is it gonna cost you to get it done? And you got to consider that. So look at your career path and put these 5. Thank you, Antoinette. Put these 5 on your list and use this as a guiding force for how you make your decisions on what you're going to do. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I really appreciate you guys, and thank you for your time. I'm going to condense this down to to audio, and also this is being broadcasted onto YouTube right now. So I didn't even check to see who was on YouTube, you guys. Let me run over here real quick. I was so messed up. You know, when you're new, let me see. Okay, so there's nobody in the live chat on YouTube. Okay, so I don't that. All right, cool. So I'm doing a dual broadcast. I'm teaching this to my CPP mentorship class on Saturday. Hey, Mike, you sandbagged us in Greensboro, by the way. See, I knew it. Because if you're teaching a mentoring class for CPP, man. Matter of fact, I should probably take that class too, Mike. I should probably take it. So you said on Saturday. All right, you guys, there it is right there. So let's get it done. Let's get it done. Each one, teach one. Remember that, you guys. Each one, teach one. My name is Keith B Dixon. You have just been hit by the hitman. This is how we roll. This is how we rock, you guys. All day, every day. Let's go. Yes, our study guide is the tool. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Rome. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you guys all day. I will see you in the morning. Morning motivation off the top of the dome. Let's go.